Hey, what's up, party people? This is the part 2 Contender Analysis. I have to do it right here in Spokane. Still, I've found myself on the Survivor beach. I'm marooned, so I'm here trying to make some shelter. All I have behind me are some rocks and some trees. So hopefully I can find some flint to be able to make some fire. I'll find my inner Nasir and hopefully sort that out. But yeah, I'll go through the contender analysis pretty quick over here. It's been very difficult for me. That's why you haven't heard from me in a while, because Queen Tiffany, the person I had from day dot as the champion, she was ousted. And let's talk about her storyline. I was absolutely in shock and awe that even happened. Lost for words. She had such a great story, the pre-Vivor story. She started getting some momentum in terms of her strategic moves. Her moves in retrospect with Xander and keeping him alive, and then Xander protecting them in the strategy seemed to make a lot of sense. And she had this kind of under-the-radar vibe. She knew her position well. She was making bonds with other players. So it was honestly a complete Edgic shock. She's the first member of the jury, so who knows, maybe the jury is going to play a big role, and Tiffany still continues to be a big character this season. But this has really thrown Edgic for a loop this entire season. You also have Shan, who's getting a lot of negative content, and she was the other kind of key contender as well. And now we have Heather upset with Shan. We have Deshawn upset with Shan. We have Nasir upset with Shan. Shan's playing a very messy game, and people are calling her out on it and saying that she's playing a messy game. So with that said, my number one is Evvie. Evvie kind of carrying the Tiffany type of edit. There's a strong underdog vibe this season with Yasa. We still don't have a lot from Evvie, but I think Evvie was actually the first or second confessional in the entire season. She had a very strong merge. She was a target. She was able to survive it. Evvie won this immunity against Heather at the end. So, like, what was going on in that immunity challenge? Spencer did it in an hour and a half, and Evvie did it in 4 minutes. She was able to chat a bit about her position. She was safe. She might be able to reintegrate back in. They had some scene with her and Deshawn making up. It's likely that Deshawn might split from Shan and start working with Evvie moving forwards, even though they both targeted each other. So I think Deshawn and Evvie could be a pretty strong bond. They had that scene, and it seemed important when they were on the journey together as well. And Evvie still has Xander. She still has people. I'm not in love with her edit. I think it's like a highly strategic edit. And then she had to eat crow, had to play a bit of an emotional game, and maybe that's her storyline. It's a winner storyline, and there's not too many other winner storylines left. Number 2, I have Xander. And so Xander had some really, really good confessionals this episode. They showed him with this advantage on the bench, and then they just made a big scene out of it. I don't know why. It could be a move that Jeff brings up at some point later on in the game to Xander's storyline. He also had this really good move where he was able to step out of the challenge and then bond with the losers, and he was able to have a confessional to explain that about, hey, like I want to be with the losers because they're usually a bit more emotional, they're able to open up a little bit more, and Xander correctly was able to find some cracks in that alliance. And it's likely that Shan and Liana and his bonds that he's making with those two, especially trying to rebuild with Liana, are working and are helping. They did a good job showing both Evvie and Xander building bonds again, and they're showing their game strategy, which I think is pretty good for Xander's odds. He also had the side storyline with Ricard telling him to play the idol, and he chose correctly again. Winners are often correct, and honestly, this marriage has been so messy that only Evvie and Xander are kind of correct, even though they messed up and flubbed this ability to save Tiffany. But they kind of departed from Tiffany, so I think their edit is saving them a little bit from being pushed into the whole Tiffany storyline with her shock exit. So I really have those two as number 1 and number 2. Number 3, I have Shan. But Shan has such a negative edit, but we understand her story. We've gotten so much content from her. She was even able to talk a little bit about being a pastor and working with different people and providing different types of stories and always having to manage different individuals. So we're still getting good Shan content. She could just have a bit of a negative win. And so I think Shan still has a viable winning story. This could be a conflict in her road, trying to resolve the relationships with Deshawn and Heather and everything else. Maybe she uses her idol to save herself. She has that idol, and then after that, she's able to rebuild. We saw something very similar in Survivor Australia with Haley, and so it's quite likely that Shan's storyline is just so strong. We understand her relationship with literally every person: Nasir, Heather, Deshawn, Liana. She has some relationship with Xander. She's an important character. She may be a final tribal council loser. It's just who's going to win next to her. And it could be a close vote, which is why the jury seems to matter, because Tiffany's edit was huge. Those are the 3 contenders. Nobody else really is in contention. I'll go through the rest. Number 4, I have Deshawn. And so Deshawn's Deshawn. He's getting like the majority alliance kind of edit. I think he's going to get blindsided. His character isn't that well developed. We got a little bit from him early on in the season about his upbringing. We don't understand his relationships too well. We don't understand that whole Erica and Heather side alliance. They kind of show that in Tribal Council. And this move that Heather made was presumably with assistance with Deshawn, because that was Deshawn's move on the show, was to try to blindside Nasir. So we're not getting a complete Deshawn storyline. And so it leads me to believe that he's not the winner. Otherwise, we'd see more about his moves. Number 5, I have Nasir. He's getting the positive content. He's a provider for the tribe. We got some second person visibility from him when Shan mentioned how Nasir is a provider and how Shan wants to keep him. So we had almost every player provide big kudos to Nasir. I think he might also be a final tribal council loser. Other than maybe like something like Evvie, Shan, Nasir, which would be pretty cool final 3. And so I think people like him, but I think his strategic chops maybe aren't there. He's now finally brought into the main storyline with this whole Heather targeting him. And so we could start to see a little bit more of how does Nasir handle pressure. This could be the start of like a very rapid build to a story. So he's still in the mix, barely. But I'd love to see more strategic content. We didn't really understand his relationships with the people who were voted out, being Tiffany, being Sydney, really. We got a little bit of Sydney, but yeah, that's Nasir. That is Nasir, as they say. And after that, there's nobody really else left in contention. Ricard, I have in number 6. We got like his whole papaya thing where he took the papaya afterwards. It's kind of negative, but he said that he likes to kind of understand people's true colors. We got a little bit of content from Ricard. He still seems to be a relevant player. I have him in the mix, maybe. Who knows? If things go sideways and Shan gets blindsided, I still think there's a Shan-Ricard storyline brewing. So we'll see what happens with Ricard there. Liana's at 7. We actually had a pretty quiet episode from Liana this go around. If she kind of rebuilds with Xander and Evvie, that would be very interesting. But she's not a winner. She messed up too much in that previous episode. Then we have Erica at 8. We don't understand her game, so she's not going to win. Danny at 9. He's part of the majority alliance. He's a big threat, but we don't understand his game either. And Heather is at 10. That move came from left field. If Heather was the winner, we'd understand the reasoning behind the move, even if it failed. So she got a couple more confessionals. I know there's a lot of Heather fans out there, but I don't see her as the winner. She's been way too invisible. So as a contender analysis, I'm still befuddled with Tiffany leaving, so it's scramble mode for me. And I have to build a shelter here to be able to survive the night too. So a lot going on here in Spokane. Tribe of Spokane. Take care, guys.